Hey everybody, I'm Ben.
I'm Boomer. It's Dad.
It's my father.
How y'all doing? Been a little bit. Had a kind of a busy schedule going on, but we are back. It's March 12th edition. Actually, it's the 14th, but we'll call it the 12th. That's all right. I will fix that up. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So we've kept track of some of the latest doings that are going down in the world, and we just thought we'd bring our spectacular viewpoints on the whole thing. So
We know you guys love hearing from us, so
we like
we're gonna
hearing
keep
from
it
us.
coming.
Mhm.
So what I'm gonna be touching on this week a little bit is an industry that is very close to me. It's the video game industry.
Nice.
And there's been a couple of major things going on lately, and we're going to start with what's probably the most egregious of them, and that is loot boxes. Now, anybody
Yeah.
who plays video games, or at least, video games that have been released within the past decade, you know that publishers and the people who are making these games love putting in mechanics that are like a random item chance. And a lot of times, in fact, most of the times, they're put in there to be bought with real money. There are some ways you can earn it in game, but for the most part, it's money. And that's been concerning a lot of people, obviously, especially since a lot of the games that have like the worst examples of this, you're talking, your Battlefront 2, your Star Wars Battlefront 2s, your Fortnites, your Overwatches, a lot of mobile games are targeted. Yep, the Fortnite dance
Sorry.
towards oh no, it's targeted towards young people.
There you go.
And
Thank you.
so there's been a lot of studies coming out basically saying that is linked towards an increase in gambling when people get older.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the same chemical reactions being triggered in the brain. And a lot of countries lately have been pushing back against this. The big example is the Netherlands, who actually made it illegal to have any of these loot box mechanics in a game. Again, citing the fact that it's basically gambling and you don't know the percentages of what you're getting. Because even casinos have standards. You go up to a slot machine, there is a certain percentage that has to be programmed, and the state will go in and check it that you're going to win or you're going to lose. A lot of games will just have like a less than 1% chance for the rarest stuff. That could mean 1 in 200. That could mean 1 in a million. So people have dumped thousands of dollars in. And now, even in the U.S., there was a bill proposed in 2019 to eliminate this. It never got passed, but the ESRB, who rates video games, is now including something on there. But there's a whole swath of countries that have made it either illegal to include these in their games or have made it like you have to put a gambling warning on the label.
I wonder what held that up in our legislature.
Video games actually, as far as how I understand it, have a pretty big lobbying influence. And a lot of times...
I wonder which party, though.
Well, both, actually. And this
both
bill
Okay.
was a bipartisan bill. One of the few times that Congress is actually working together. But and video games is kind of it's not like a major industry like films or TV or any other kind of entertainment industry. So it's not as well regulated yet.
Programming our youth, though. So
yes.
That's an important thing.
And that's going to come into another thing when it comes to being unregulated with the video game industry, is basically releasing unfinished products for full price, which has been triggering a lot of class action lawsuits against publishers and developers recently.
I just bought a car, only had 3 tires. It was fine.
But if you did, you would expect to be able to take some sort of legal recourse.
Yeah.
So a lot of these big games that have been coming out lately, they'll promise a whole bunch of features. Say, if you buy this game, this is what you're getting. You're getting huge story, open world, great combat, all that. And then they release a half-baked product. So one of the biggest recent examples of this has been Anthem from my favorite studio, BioWare. It's come out with Mass Effect, Dragon Age, some great, super well-respected video game titles, and they just released one called Anthem. I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, to really lukewarm, which then turned to super cold reception very quickly. People realized it was just a shell of a game. There was a huge Kotaku article about it, delved in, their stock prices, dropped a bunch. It was a big issue in the video game community. So finally, they have been promising people, we're going to keep updating it. We promise you'll get your money's worth. They officially announced that they weren't going to be working on it again this past week.
Did they get money back?
No, they didn't give money back. There are a couple class action lawsuits. But the same happened with another thing, Fallout 76, a couple years before that. And the newest is Marvel's Avengers, a new video game by Square Enix, or that's at least the publisher. Again, they just announced this past week that they'd be making some changes to it that everybody who plays the game hates, absolutely hates. Padding the runtime, making it to seem like you're getting, more gameplay from an unfinished game. The player base is dropping, and they're going to shut it down soon.
And most importantly, that doesn't even look like Scarlett Johansson.
It really doesn't.
They did it.
It's not worth $60.
Not worth it.
And don't believe developers when they promise you a roadmap for these things.
At least do Scarlett Johansson.
Yep.
That's all.
And then maybe a positive, a $7.5 billion purchase of Bethesda, which you guys, I'm sure know, are Skyrim, Fallout, Doom, all these huge franchises, just got purchased by Microsoft for $7.5 billion.
Okay.
It's a crazy merger. It just got approved by the United States government, and then it just got approved by EU. It had to because it was such a big merger, bringing so much money basically together under one roof. But like I was saying before, Fallout 76, huge dumpster fire of a game, came out a few years ago. Bethesda's been sued multiple times, had to pay out thousands, if not millions of dollars to consumers, had to remake a bunch of different stuff for people who pre-ordered the game and were promised a bunch of cool merch and got nothing or just absolute garbage quality versions of the good ones they were promised. Finally got bought out by Microsoft. Todd Howard, the lead guy at Bethesda, was saying that this might help prevent another, like I said, dumpster fire like Fallout 76. He's very psyched for it. But other people in the industry are complaining that this might almost start breaking monopoly laws. There are plenty of other big video game, publishers out there like EA and Activision, but Microsoft getting this, and they said that they're planning on making all of Bethesda's games just Microsoft exclusive. So this is a huge, so you won't be able to play them like on a PlayStation or on Nintendo or anything like that. And
Dark side.
Bethesda, they're a huge studio, and this might have some positives for Bethesda, but for video games as a whole, not so great.
Not so great is right. Well, on that interesting news, we get to the regular segment here where we just kind of keep an eye on what's happening in our chock full of nuts area known as the government.
Known as the real world.
Exactly. I put up, so you might recognize this nutball too. Going way back to chock full of nuts. Great saying. That was an awful saying. The great masses of people will more easily fall victims to the big lie than the small one. And Joseph Goebbels, also I could put his quote up here too about just like repeating the lie. Let's pause a minute. The whole election thing was taken to 60 court cases, Republican and Democratic lawyers or judges. Not a single lawyer could bring evidence. I think one case was one where they were able to move from 10 feet away for observing to 6 feet away for observing. I do believe that's the only case that was won. It went not once, but twice to the Supreme Court. The Republican Supreme Court.
Majority conservative.
And they found there was no evidence. So I'm still trying to figure out the people that are running around telling the big lie. So I don't know what that is. Thankfully, our new president is a little less nuts than the last one. And his great quote was about Ted Cruz. He kind of likened him to Joseph Goebbels, who was, one of the head propaganda ministers for Adolf Hitler. So that's not a good comparison to make. But he's earned it. Now, and this keeps going too. Now in Ohio, they decided that they were not going to support the voting machines that have had a spotless history up until, strangely, this last election. Spotless. Like no problems at all. No issues at all, ever. So now there are counties in Ohio that don't want to use those machines because of the big lie. Georgia, they're passing bills to end a lot of absentee voting. The rules that they are putting on there is like you have to send a copy of your ID and you have to have another signature on that too to verify that you did that. They've also closed the open voting window. There was a big push before this last election that after church, since the polls were open on Sunday, go vote, go vote. Well, guess what day they got rid of in Georgia now? Sunday. That's gone. So they don't want any more of that going on. And Dominion, though, is not taking this standing still. They have sued Rudy Giuliani, the My Pillow jerk, and Sidney Powell, who was an attorney for Trump, for billions of dollars for defamation. Fox News has recanted all their statements. The other two crazy
Newsmax and One America News.
They've recanted, and in fact, if My Pillow guy went on one of those and started talking, they're like, "Whoa, you can't say that," because they don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
So there is nothing there, but yet it keeps getting repeated, and I cannot understand where this is still coming from. It makes no sense. It's just a bunch of nuts, is what I think. The other thing that has really come up too, this came to my thought process because Amazon is voting right now whether to unionize their first plant.
I heard, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of a big deal. So not a single Republican voted for the coronavirus bill that just passed. Not a single Republican. Some of them are out there now advertising the parts of it to their constituents about how great the bill is and how they'll be getting money for small bit, blah, blah, blah. But none of them voted for it, so how can they? Whatever, that's a whole, maybe that's next week. But this all brings up to the fact that our laws and our legislation have gotten to the point where CEO compensation has grown 940% since 1978. Wait for it. But the workers' compensation has grown 12% during that time. And it's infuriating that this has happened because, well, again, you've got such a difference in parties. You've got one that's pro-union, which is kind of a check and balance to things. And that's what's happening here. This chart is showing here when we had sort of a balance between crazy compensation and worker pay, which I keep hearing in all the elections, everybody's like, we need to support the average worker. This looks like when the average worker was supported. And now again, that was back in the 1940s and 50s when union membership was high. Now it's starting to spread, and now union membership has dropped to to its lowest level almost since the 1920s, 1930s.
Looks like this area, by the way, was around the time of the Great Depression. It's not economically good to have that huge of a wealth gap between your population.
And I wonder if that's maybe going to correct itself in another devastating way again too. But
it looks like it's headed back that way.
Income of the top 10% soaring again. To me, this seems like union membership is, for the rich people, an unwanted check on their monopoly of power, which is kind of a shame. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You guys unionized?
Nope.
Is there any talk of it?
Nope.
I'm a union member, and it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's well-intentioned in general, that you have a balance and you have discussions. And I know our union's pretty healthy, where if there's a problem, we can talk about things and work things out. Well, one more issue to end with on a lighter note. During the pandemic, of course, everybody ran to their little shelter, grabbed their little poochie.
You had to, yeah.
But what's the good news since then?
You tell me.
Well, I thought maybe now that we're getting there. I thought maybe people would be bringing the dogs back or putting them back. But the good news, this was just from the last week or two. Pet adoptions are still surging. People have found out that those dogs are important, that companionship is important, that dogs just love you all the time. Still not going to get a dog. But I appreciate dogs a little bit more. Sorry, Brian said. Not getting a dog. No. Sorry, Ben.
That's all right. We'll talk them into it, yeah.
So that was kind of a good news. And who doesn't love, puppies? So that's pretty good. But anyway, just wanted to check in, catch up with you, and hopefully it'll be a little bit less time before our next one. And anyways, I'm Boomer.
I'm Ben.
We'll see you again.